changes in their schedule that have forced us to relook at timing, and so that's something that I'm working with Jack Schwarber, their AD, on, try to come up with a date in the future.
The Power Five, this is a chance for them to separate, but is this a chance for you to separate from the other schools that aren't Power Five and show, hey, we're a little bigger player than maybe some of you knew?
You know, I think we can really separate, but it's more about internally what we want to do. And we just want to be the best we can be. And with the tradition of BYU football, we feel that making moves will naturally bring us along with the group above as instead of regressing.
What are some of the things you plan to do with this newfound autonomy that schools have been granted?
Well, there's a lot of options. I think one of the things right off the bat is with the feeding the student athletes. We feel that nutrition is an important part, and we'll work on that right off the bat.
Are you going to go straight to full cost of attendance scholarships?
We won't right away because that doesn't come into play for a year. So we'll start examining that soon.
Do you think you'll probably do it?
We have to see kind of how other schools do it and how it's going to be determined, what the value, what the number will be, and if we need to be in the game with that competitively, we'll work to be there.
Does the Power 5 thing create a bigger gap, and how might that impact the way things are?
Well, the Power 5 is not everybody all together. There's a great gradients amongst the Power 5 schools, so you're going to see a lot of bickering within the Power 5 about what they do. So we'll have to monitor this for quite a while just to see what's best, and we'll do what's most creative for BYU.
You only have a couple bowl announcements set. How close are you to something else? Should BYU fans stress about that?
No, they shouldn't stress about that. The important thing is that we feel solid with our arrangements with the future bowls, but they don't need to be announced. And you got to understand that there are no bowl games announced for anybody. Of course, they have conference affiliations, but we'll slide in at the appropriate time.
Comments Bronco made to the paper in Austin about wanting to join the Big 12. I think a lot of people inferred that there was a sense of urgency now is developing to join a Power 5 or to get that kind of access you're looking for. Was that the motive behind that? And how would you react to that?
Bronco's motive is that he's competitive, and he wants his team to be playing the best teams possible so that his team can fight to be a national champion or to be a top 10 team or a top 5 team. And you can only be there by playing those teams. So as an independent, we're trying to play those games. He feels that being in the Big 12 would be a great opportunity to enhance his opportunity for the team to be successful.
So it wasn't a reaction like, oh no, the gap's widening, we got to make a move, we got to put our name out there, we got to be more aggressive.
I don't believe so.
You went into great detail there, and I know you're going to kind of summarize it here, but that detail was awesome. So if you could give us as much as you could about how involved conferences and teams are and how much they understand about everybody's pluses and minuses and what they can or can't bring to a league, and just how detailed. There's really nothing you explain because everybody understands the big picture.
Well, this is the business of conferences in schools. That's why you have conferences, so they get together as universities to do their business. And if you haven't figured it out, this is a business right now, college athletics. So they're going to make sure that they have people at the conference level, not necessarily the schools, doing all the research and all the data so that they know exactly what they want to do with their conference, having to do with everything from autonomy to scheduling to affiliation, bowls, TV, all of that is handled at the conference level.
Is scheduling just as detailed and well known? Is there really anything anyone can email into you that you and the conferences and ESPN don't already know?
Unless it comes from an athletic director or ESPN, then I know about it. Sometimes we have fans out there that are trying to help and think they have a great game that they've read somewhere, but most of those times it's old news.
The scheduling you said has changed over time. Can you explain what it used to be like and what it's like now with conferences?
Well, it used to be that we had to schedule 3 or 4 games a year, and now we schedule 13. And a lot of conferences are defining the parameters of what their schools and their conference can do, such as you can only play the games in the first 3 weeks of the season, you can't play games in November, you have to play a certain division level. All those schools or conferences are trying to do that for their best interest, but sometimes playing BYU is for the best interest of that conference.
Is the playoff going to change the nature of bowl games, and should people not get worked up about your bowl agreements? Is a bowl just going to kind of turn into a 13th or 14th game unless you're in the playoff or maybe one of the big four access bowls next year?
Well, I love the bowl games, being a participant as a player and coach. I think our student athletes love the bowl games, but it seems like the college football playoff now is really the focus, and that's the hype. So I think the bowl games themselves, the importance of them, will be a little bit deflated, but each bowl is going to have to do their own to make it seem like it's still a really special traditional bowl.
Do you talk to the selection committee members, now that we know who they are, about what they value and how they look at the BYU schedule and how maybe you can tweak it to make it better?
We will. It'll be just like the college basketball selection committee, where there'll be monthly calls, or sometimes as it gets closer, maybe every other week, where there'll be members of the selection committee who are assigned specific conferences, so that those conferences can, it's not necessarily lobby, but can give information to those selection members, and the independent schools are part of that process.
What have you heard from the NCAA so far about the investigation into possible violations, and what do you expect to hear soon?
Well, we've been notified that they do have that case now. They've been a little bit backed up with all the NCAA actions that have taken place over the last 9 months. And so we expect to hear something pretty soon.
How many student athletes could possibly be involved in its biggest scope?
I mean, we know the number, and most of them are very minor. There may be a few that may escalate to a little bit of a higher, but we'll find that news out shortly.
Could that impact their playing status?
It's always possible, but we'll see that in a little while.
So how's Broncos supposed to prepare for games? I mean, getting so close. I mean, it's one thing not knowing all summer, that's a big deal, but to not know the week of the game.
I think it comes down to the rules and regulations under the NCAA that we operate with now. And we're all a little, it happens a lot where you wonder what's going to happen or what their verdict's going to be, and you just wait and see what it comes out to.
What triggered this investigation for you?
Usually somebody will come up forward with a possible violation, and anytime we hear anything regarding a possible violation, internally we investigate to see if there's anything there. A lot of the times there's not, and we're thankful, tell them thanks for checking. But sometimes there may be a violation, and that's where we have to go further and follow through with the entire process.
What makes you want to bring in someone from the outside to help investigate?
Well, I think that in some cases you need clarification, or there might be a better a road to take. Because of the timing of it, you want to make sure that things are clean and precise, and that it doesn't drag on for a long time. Unfortunately, this year, with all the peripheral things that were going on in the NCAA, that particular unit of the NCAA got a little backlogged.
So you said there's not really a time frame, but are you anticipating anything during the season, after the season? Because
no, I didn't say there wasn't a time frame. There hadn't been until recently, but I would imagine that we'll get something probably this week.
So there wouldn't be a conflict about playing someone that shouldn't be played?
I mean, there could. Oh, no. That wouldn't be the case. They can't. No, that
okay.
Doesn't work that way.
Just in the past year, you changed your policy on how to handle student athletes that have honor code violations and how it's communicated with the media. Now you've had a few months here and we've had some situations. Do you feel good about that stuff? Are you happy with the way that that's working?
Yeah, I am. I think it's good. I think we work to put that into place to protect their privacy. And I think it's ironic now that we have a couple of kids that kind of come through on their own and announce their suspension. And now everybody wants us to say what's out there. And that's not going to happen.
Last question.
So we all have a good one. We were going to be polite about it.
More about the Power 5, just how you see it affecting BYU recruiting-wise, financially, able to compete.
Well, we're not in the Power 5 as it exists right now, but we're focused on what we've done for a long time, decades and decades. It's been pretty successful. So instead of chasing after necessarily what the Power 5 are doing, or individual schools, we think it's best to stay on track with what has brought BYU to this point. Now we're going to make some changes and we'll adapt around us, but we got to stay kind of true to who we are and what we do.
Well, one last thing about the investigation. What changes have you made going forward so you don't end up in this situation again?
Well, whenever we violate a rule, part of the NCAA's assistance is to make sure that they give you a rules education. So these were not situations that were done blatantly, where there's just mistakes that were not known that they were violations until it was discovered. And so that's why we have to just make sure people understand, hey, this is something that you cannot do. It's a violation of an NCAA rule. Make sure everybody pays attention.
Does BYU have the resources to hang with the haves as opposed to the have-nots, the ones that aren't included?
Well, I don't think there's a line that says these do and these don't. I think that we are where we are now because of good strategy, great accomplishments in the past from our players and coaches and teams, and great success from our fans, great support from our institution and church. And so I really think it comes down to we are BYU, and we're going to do what we do best, and that's compete as hard as we can with the proper funding, and we will raise a lot of money. We'll raise whatever money we need to do what we need to, but we're not going to keep up with the Joneses in every single area.